Hello and welcome. My name
His name's is for tombstones, baby. Y'all take this honky out and waste him, now!
Back to Bond vs. Bond, the first outings. It's Roger Moore's turn. With Dr. No, I talked about the creation of James Bond. With On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I talked about the problems with that movie. But Live and Let Die is great. It's all just great. From the title song by Paul McCartney to the boat chase. From Sheriff Pepper to Baron Samedi. We're just going to talk about it. We're just going to start talking about it. First, it had to succeed. Out of 25 Bond films, there were 2 that had to succeed or the series would die. This is the first. They got a new actor for On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it didn't work out. Sean came back for one more in Diamonds Are Forever, but was not coming back again. They had to recast Bond again, and audiences had to like it this time. The second one that had to succeed was GoldenEye, by the way, when the franchise had been dormant for 6 years. We're going to talk about that when we get to Brosnan's first outing. And speaking of the franchise being dormant for 6 years, we might be well on our way to another 6 years if the recent news is true, and we're going to talk about that soon in an upcoming video as well. But anyway, Live and Let Die had to succeed. To avoid another Lazenby incident, 3 decisions were made up front. An experienced director this time, an experienced actor this time, and bring back the fun from the Connery films. I'm sorry, they're doing some kind of yard work outside. The show must go on. Where On Her Majesty's had first-time director Peter Hunt, Live and Let Die got 2-time Bond director Guy Hamilton. He directed Goldfinger, which had the highest box office for Bond at the time, and he also righted the ship with Diamonds Are Forever after the miss with Lazenby. I don't think the critics liked Diamonds Are Forever very much, but the audience did, and that's more important. I know I'm a critic, but I'm on YouTube. It's different. I'm not like one of them. I'm one of you. You can trust me. You can trust me. You can trust... Guy Hamilton's direction is far more assured than Peter Hunt's. It's not tense or frantic. It's smooth and funny. This is not a drama or a thriller. It's an adventure movie like Bond is supposed to be. Instead of relying on editing nonsense to liven up dull action, Hamilton constructs crystal clear action scenes that are exciting because of humor, clever escapes, and amazing stunt work. The second key decision was an experienced lead actor. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the first time they recast Bond, famously used George Lazenby, who had never acted a day in his life. After that didn't go well, Diamonds Are Forever won some fan goodwill back, but the critics were still saying the series was dead. Critics. Who listens to critics anyway? Who needs them? Critics. Good thing I'm just a totally normal and relatable person like you. This time they got Roger Moore. He was already a household name for years before he even played Bond. He had headlined 5 different TV shows, including The Saint, his most famous role, which was also a roguish, outside-the-law type hero. Roger was what you would call the safe choice. Normally it's not great when producers play it safe, but Roger is the exception. He went on to make 7 Bond films, more than any other actor, and to this day he still goes toe-to-toe with Sean Connery for the title of fan-favorite Bond actor. To say he has made his mark on this series would be an understatement. For a lot of fans, he truly made this series his own. On top of that, if I could hang out with any Bond actor while they were playing Bond, it would be Roger Moore in a heartbeat. Connery would rather be golfing, Lazenby talks about himself too much, Dalton would be rehearsing Shakespeare or something, Brosnan would be a close second choice, and Craig wouldn't even pretend he wants to hang out with a fan. All while Moore would be planning a practical joke on the director, or a fellow actor, and inviting you to join him. All the Bond actors had a reputation for being very professional, but Roger Moore is one of those actors, if you ask 100 people who worked with him, you'll get 100 stories of how pleasant he was. He was just a really fantastic Bond, but bringing this back to Live and Let Die, he had an amazing debut in the role, every bit as good as the producers needed it to be. This may come as a surprise to you, but the series didn't die in 1973.
Suppose that's something.
Tom Mankiewicz, who had written Diamonds Are Forever, came back to write Live and Let Die, and he did something very important. He differentiated between Sean and Roger. He wrote Bond differently for Roger. Sounds simple enough, but watch Timothy Dalton's first Bond and see how much it feels like it was written for Roger Moore.
What happened? Salt corrosion.
We'll be talking about that soon when we cover his first Bond outing. In his commentary, Tom Mankiewicz is always talking about the difference between what Sean can do and what Roger can do, and how knowing the difference is really what makes Roger shine. Sean could never wear Solitaire's robes, for example. It would be ridiculous. Likewise, Roger could never shoot Professor Dent in cold blood. He treats them like the different people they are, and the results speak for themselves. Go figure. Now, the third key decision was to bring back the fun of the Connery Bond films. And I really have to give Tom Mankiewicz credit here, too. He proved he could do it with Diamonds Are Forever, and he really did it with Live and Let Die. He wrote that Mr. Big line at the front of this video that everyone loves. And if you listen to Roger Moore's commentary on Live and Let Die, he thanks Tom Mankiewicz for his favorite lines more than once. On Her Majesty's Secret Service was a more strict adaptation from the novel, so it was much more serious. The fans wanted to go back, and Live and Let Die satisfied them. What more can you say? Now let's talk about David Hedison for a second, or as I like to call him, the once and future Felix. Felix Leiter is a CIA agent who turns up in the books and the movies sometimes, and he helps Bond. Although he only appears in 10 of the 25 movies, he's been played by 7 different actors. That's more than Bond himself. David Hedison plays Felix in Live and Let Die, another actor plays him in The Living Daylights, and then Hedison returns in License to Kill, making him the only Felix actor to play alongside 2 separate Bond actors. He was the only actor to play Felix more than once at all, until Jeffrey Wright played Felix 3 times in the Daniel Craig films. And that's probably the last time I'll talk about Felix until I do a review on No Time to Die or License to Kill. If you know those movies, you know why. The 2 other side characters I have to mention are Sheriff Pepper and Baron Samedi, because one is hilarious and one is a voodoo god. Let's start with Sheriff J.W. Pepper. To be clear, he's not the voodoo god. At least not that I know of. Sheriff Pepper only appears in the 12-minute long boat chase near the end of the movie. If you ever want a picture-perfect balance between incredible action and hilarious comic relief, watch this boat chase. He was so funny and popular that he comes back in the next movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. Recently, Sheriff Pepper has taken a lot of heat for being racist. I'll be honest with you, he is racist. But he's also hilarious.
Nobody cuts and runs on Sheriff J.W. Pepper. And it's him speaking, by the by.
The irony here is this. People have said Sheriff Pepper is offensive in the Bond movies, but Tom Mankiewicz specifically wrote him so the audience would have someone else to laugh at besides all the black villains. And that brings me to another point, blaxploitation. Live and Let Die is what they call a blaxploitation film. The Bond films will often do this where they tune into a specific genre or topic that is very popular at the time. From Russia with Love copies Hitchcock. The Man with the Golden Gun talks about the energy crisis. Moonraker takes Bond to space 2 years after Star Wars came out, and so on. Live and Let Die is the most obvious case of this. Okay, second most obvious after Moonraker. Even the score by George Martin is very different than the John Barry scores that came before and blends right into the blaxploitation films of the era. And yes, all the villains are black. Tom Mankiewicz went to great care to not let this cause any problems. The villains often have the upper hand on Bond, even outsmarting and trapping him more than once, but it's never quite enough to stop him. And one of these villains is Baron Samedi, the voodoo god of the dead. And the movie goes to some lengths to show that this person who Bond physically fights and calls himself Baron Samedi is actually the real Baron Samedi. I first heard of Baron Samedi in GoldenEye 64 when I had absolutely no idea who he was. Bond sort of kills him twice in the movie, but as the credits roll we see he is still alive. In the commentary they say they thought about bringing him back, but hilariously, and rightfully, Sheriff Pepper came back instead. Although some say Baron Samedi still returns to haunt Bond premieres. And sells soda.
7-Up, the uncooler.
Anyway, another nice touch if you really want your Bond movie to be successful is to have Paul McCartney sing the Bond song.
So live and let die.
Obviously it became the most famous Bond song, but there's a funny little story. George Martin, who produced the song with Paul McCartney, was showing it to the Bond people, and they asked him who they think they should get to sing it. George Martin had to put it as delicately as he could. Either Paul sings it, or you don't get the song. It's one of the few times the Bond producers had to concede to somebody else. I really should mention the villain and the Bond girl. Yaphet Kotto plays the villain, and Jane Seymour plays the Bond girl. They did good. There, I mentioned them. Just 2 more things before we wrap this up. Ted Moore returns to shoot the film, and I think he's my favorite director of photography of any Bond film. Yes, including Roger Deakins. His shots just have such clarity and such beautiful color. And the last thing I must mention is the famous crocodile stunt. I always wondered why it was crocodiles and not alligators if it was in Louisiana. Turns out the answer is simple. It was filmed in Jamaica. Ross Kanenga is the man who ran this crocodile farm, and he performed the stunt running across the crocodiles whose legs were restrained under the water. The filmmakers were so impressed with this absolute mad lad that they named the movie's villain after him. I'd say this is my 2nd or 3rd favorite stunt in any Bond movie, after the corkscrew jump and the 18-wheeler driving on its side. And with that, we're off to Bond vs. Bond, but I must give Live and Let Die a rating. I give it 8 out of 10 commandments. It's not an incredible film, it's just so darn sturdy. I watched all 3 commentaries and then the movie itself for this review, and I still wasn't bored. That means poor old Lazenby is still in the rear with 4. Moore and Craig are now tied for 2nd with 7.5 each, and Connery leads with 8. For the other Bond reviews, be sure to check out the Bond vs. Bond playlist. The next in this season is The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton's first outing. However, I have to pause this season and do the 3rd annual State of Movies address. That's important. So that comes first, and then Timothy Dalton. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We're already more than halfway done with this season, so don't forget to put your suggestions for next season in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.